Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Playoff Storm Cellar, Ray. Welcome everyone back. There's plenty of room in the Storm Cellar. The bandwagon is growing, I believe, especially after Game 1 victory. Right? We got 16 teams of fans who need someone to land, and we are inviting all of them to join us in the Storm Cellar. Hop on the Canes bandwagon. How you feeling this morning, Ray?
Good. I'm feeling a little bit of relief because that could have been the fuggliest victory in a Game 1 that I've ever seen.
Win.
No, and we're thankful for the win, but my goodness, that was tough to watch at times. I did a lot of yelling, which made my dog look at me weird. He was like, "Really? You're upset? What's going on? I didn't do anything." And it's like, "No, it's not you, Rorschach." One of those things, but we're glad for the win. Man. Yeah, no, I don't want to, but I'll tell you what's always good is the guests that we get into the Storm Cellar to chop up things. And we needed an expert. We needed someone who could help us break it down and really examine it. And who better than the return guest that we have today, Mr. Mike Solarte of Spectrum News. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike. Welcome back. It was great to see you in the outdoor game at the Stadium Series. That's the last time we actually had a chance to really chat with you, but now we're going to chop things up for this series. How you been?
I've been good. That's a great. I was really waiting for the line though. I was waiting for you to jab me, saying, "Who better to break it down, than an expert?" But he couldn't join us, so Mike is here today. So
no.
I was waiting for that jab. I was waiting for it.
That was nice.
Everything's going well, boys. Everything's going well.
You're being modest, Mike. So many Triangle Hurricanes fans cut their teeth in those late '90s listening to the sports bar. You 100% taught, I'm sure, thousands of North Carolinians the rules of hockey, man.
Well, it was the game, obviously, just like it is for you guys. The game's a passion of mine, and I was just happy to be there when the wheel went round, when the Hurricanes came to town. So great to be back with you, fellas. Great to be back.
You betcha, and we're thankful for it. Let's chop up this series here, and coming into this one, there was I don't know, I think Brad and I were only slightly disappointed that it wasn't the Flyers who were able to hold on to that position or someone else. We ended up with the Islanders, who have been red hot for a month. I mean, they've been playing playoff hockey for a long time, and we got a good look at that in display in game time, in real time last night, because the Islanders played a heck of a game. They still lost, but they played a great game and deserved probably a little bit better than what they got if it were not for Freddie Andersen. What was your take on this one coming in? Well, first of all, did you have a prediction how many games this one was going to be? And did Game 1, tell you exactly what you needed to know?
What it told me, and I don't get in the business of making predictions. It never really was something I really wanted to do. But
sure,
what Game 1 told me was that it's the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you got a 2-3 matchup out of the Metro Division. You got a Carolina team that narrowly missed out on winning the President's Trophy, and you got a rematch against a team that they knocked out in the first round in 6 games. And even though it's a different year, the Islanders have a different coach, and Patrick Waugh, I think, has made a nice impression on this team, where they're playing his style of game. They're playing they're playing hard. They're playing fast. They're playing a different brand of hockey than they were playing last season. and that was a 6-game series. But the thing that I lean on, the thing that I lean into, is that this Hurricanes team is not the same team as last year either. You know, I mean, with guys like Kuznetsov and Guentzel added into the mix, Freddie Andersen as fresh as he's going to be at this time of year. I mean, 4 months on the sidelines with the thrombosis aside, this is probably physically as well rested as he's been coming into a playoffs. And I just, and you're getting contributions. Seth Jarvis has made a huge leap this year. Jalen Chatfield and Dmitry Orlov have looked so good on the back end, and that's your third pairing. So, I mean, what does that tell you how deep this team is? So I just think this is a different Hurricanes group than a year ago. It's a different Islanders vibe than a year ago as well, based off of who's behind their bench. But, I thought for a game one, it was a Stanley Cup playoff game. And, Kuzi scores the first one, gets the train rolling. But before you know it, later in the first, the Islanders don't blink and they got the game tied. And you're just wondering, okay, we'll see how this plays out from here, because there's a little bit of adversity. But get to the third period, Steph Nason gets that chance in front. Nate just ices it with an empty netter. To me, it was a playoff game. It was a good, close, hard-fought 2-1 game, even though the final was 3-1.
That's for me, what was one of the things that I looked forward to the most, number one, and you talk about the comparisons to last year. Already the Hurricanes were different in the fact that Svechnikov was playing. Mm-hmm. And how much of a difference would he make to the lineup, never mind the amazing additions of Guentzel and Kuznetsov. Although I have to say, like, Svechnikov was great, so great, as a matter of fact, that middle of the game, he saw himself bumped up in lines where he was paired with Aho and Guentzel by the end of the night. And Jarvis, who looked a little invisible for the first part of the game, when he dropped down with Stahl and Martinook, suddenly he got into the mix as well. Mm-hmm. And who could forget the hit that he laid on Dobson? I felt that hit. That was something I did not expect out of. I'm not saying I don't expect it out of Seth, but how many big hits does he get like that? That was crazy. Brad?
Yeah, no, he doesn't get many big hits, but he's made strides this year as an NHL player. There's no doubt about it.
That's the kind of hit when you watch the replay, have the sound on. Like, yeah, you can hear it. Like that was a boomer. My first thought was the Drowning Pool song, "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor." I'm like, oh yeah,
yes.
Like, Seth is feeling it. For me, I go ahead, Ray.
No. It's all you.
I was just going to say, so before the game, I kind of had I posted like my ideas, keys to the game. Number one, take advantage of the power play, and they did that. They went 1 for 3, 33%. Can't be mad about that, right? So the Islanders are 32nd in the penalty kill in the league. And you have the number 2 power play. If you get 3 power plays, you need to score in at least 1. 2 is not out of the realm of possibility, right? But if they're going to give you advantages, take advantage. Number 2 is stay out of the box. No dumb offensive zone penalties. I gave us an X on that because even though Svech is my boy, high sticking right in front of the crease, it's a retaliation penalty. And Svech is not a rookie, and he knows they don't normally call the first one. They may or may not see it. They almost always see the retaliation. You're going to go to the box. Now, their power play is not incredibly strong, but why give them an advantage, right? Any opportunity that you can take away from your opponent, you need to settle down and relax. So I thought overall penalties were about even. Like they were kind of what I expected for playoff hockey. I know Islanders fans are upset. Was it a tripping holding call that Shea drew?
Yeah.
It was soft, but if you look back, it was more of a trip. Because if you look, he puts his skate into Shea's skate. That's really why Shea went down. It wasn't that Shea was was embellishment. But if you called both of them, I'd be not furious about it. I will say the slashing call that I think was Slavin drew. Slavin is a Lady Bing guy. Like, he normally draws 2 or 4 penalty minutes a year. Like, he's just not that guy. If he went down, it's because it hurt. And if you don't think it hurts, if you've never played hockey, give somebody a broom handle and have them whack you in the back of the knee one time and see if you stand up on half-inch wide blades of steel. You're not going to. It hurts, right? And the reality is, even if it's a weak slash, it's still a slash, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a cross check is they don't call, they call 1 in every 20 cross checks. They could call 20 out of 20. They just don't. But it's still a cross check. And, finally I said, expect their goalies to kind of stonewall you for a while, which didn't happen initially, but then, right?
Yeah.
Varlamov kind of got in his groove, got settled, and yet we had less than 15 shots through the first 2. And the Canes really didn't find their game until the 3rd. And then it's a matter of putting it on net. And Nathan's goal, beautiful goal. I loved it. Right? So the Hurricanes, before the show, I told Mike, I said, I'd give them like a B minus for yesterday. They didn't play great. They played okay. The shot totals for newer fans, it's normal for shot totals to go down in the playoffs because you're going to see guys blocking shots that they normally might let the goaltender deal with because now every game counts. Yeah. It's almost like hitting in baseball. A 1-0 count is much different than an 0-1 count, right? You want to be ahead from the get-go. So I wouldn't say I was impressed with their game yesterday. I agree with Mike. This is just kind of how playoff hockey starts to look. The good news is you won a 3-1 game, really 2-1 without that empty netter, but no points from Jarvis, Svetch, Aho, Gensel, Teravainen. Those guys, all of your top scorers, with the exception of Marty Necas, were scoreless. And you still found a way to win. And that depth scoring in the playoffs is what's going to drive you to victories.
Mike, when you look at how well that our top line was essentially nullified, like I got to say, they looked completely invisible. Really, the only time there seemed to be any action whatsoever, it was, with Stahl's line and Kuznetsov was bouncing around. The fourth line was working too. But what did you think about, everyone was very hyped up. And Brad, I'll speak for Brad. We were both really looking forward to the Jag line just kind of lighting things up. And they were completely nullified yesterday. What's your take on that? That was a little surprising. I expected a little more jump out of them.
Well, I think that you probably didn't notice the jump because of the fact that they were taken away. We're not excuse me, we're not in an era where teams are watching 8mm film on their opponents these days. I mean, there are smart people behind those benches for both Carolina and the Islanders that know the strengths and weaknesses and how to neutralize guys and how to take guys away. And I did notice that Aho seemed to be having to fight a little extra harder to find any open ice. They're trying to look. Patrick Waugh knows if 20 gets going, if 24 gets going, if 59 gets going, they're done. So they've got to take every measure to limit their opportunities, to limit their space, limit time and space. When 20's got the puck, take it away. 59's got the puck, take away time and space. 24's coming down the rush, take away time and space. Jarvie had the one move where he almost turned the defenseman inside out, and ended up not getting a shot on goal on it. But he came down, I think, in the 3rd period, where he tried to make a move on a D, and I forget who the defenseman was, but tried to go inside, outside through his legs, and because he was trying to create anything, and because there was no room out there for them. And, and the mention that Brad had about, without their stars, they still win a 2-1, 3-1 game. And that secondary scoring, well, that's a part of it. But as they say in the playoffs, your best players have to be your best players. So for one game, your best players weren't necessarily your best players in productivity. But I think a lot of that is due to the fact that the Islanders were prepared for that. They were trying to take away a guy that they acquired at the deadline in 59 in Gensel, who's a proven playoff producer. You take away your points leader in Aho. You take away Jarvis, the rising star, who had 30-plus this year. You do that, you give yourself a chance to win. I mean, from the Islanders' standpoint. So I thought that the Islanders, and to Brad's point about it being a B- game, yeah, it's a B- game is good, and you got to win with a B- game. But I think I don't. If you find A+ games, if you find an A game, where you grade out with an A, then you probably won the game by 4 or 5 goals. That's just the nature of the playoffs, So I'll take B- across the board, but you got to try to at least get to solid B, maybe a B+ to feel better about your overall team game. But back to your question though about Aho and those again, the Jag line, not really creating. I think you got to give credit to the Islanders because that, again, we're talking about a 1-goal game here, guys. It wasn't that they ran roughshod over. That either team really had much of an upper hand throughout the 60 minutes.
Brad, it looked like you had something on your mind.
I just wanted to say, so I thought the Islanders, Mike hit it, right? They did a great job effectively neutralizing our top line. My only concern there is, and that's what you have to do. So this isn't unexpected. This is what we thought they would see. But you have last change because you're at home, which means you get to pair up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the issues that the Hurricanes have had in the past was when you go over to the island, now you have last change, and now they can put whoever they want on your top line. So Rod needs to figure out a way to shake that line loose while he's at home, right? Because he has last change. He needs to find a way to get those guys against, weaker defenders, if at all possible, to open things up for them. Or maybe the game plan is, okay, well, if you're going to put your best against, our top line, we have the weapons now to hurt you elsewhere, and that's what we saw last night.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's a part of it that I hadn't even thought of. With that having last change on your home ice, I mean, there's really kind of no reason. You're going to end up having a double shift that group, but there's also, I also don't want to. This is one of those things where it's the playoffs and we're looking for every bit. And I love the fact that we're breaking it down, but we're looking for every small nook and cranny here to try to figure out why Hurricanes fans shouldn't be nervous about a game 1 opening win. But the last change aspect of it is true, but you also have to give credit to the Islanders, and you also have to think sometimes, go back to the 82 games. Sure, Aho is great, Jarvis is great, and Gensel was great upon arrival, but they weren't clicking every single night. They didn't have big games every night too. So there's a lot. There's a lot of different ways you can go, and the beauty part is that we can talk about it for a day, and game 2 is tomorrow. Game 2 is Monday. So
yeah.
So there's a lot we can break down in all of that, but you can attribute it to a lot of things. I think that last change is a really good point, Brad. But also you got to credit the Islanders for the way that they defended and took away time and space. And like I say, that's the beauty part for us to break down. The tougher challenges for the coaches to figure out, okay, how can we shake 20, 59, and 24 loose again to get them going?
I noticed the change for the Islanders anyway in the way that they killed penalties. Previously, they were not a high pressure, like they were more than happy to let teams pass the puck around the outside and do whatever. They were very zone centric as far as how they killed their penalties and stuff. Just, you could take a shot from outside, but we've got enough guys back in front of our goaltending that we know the first stop's going to be made and we'll be able to clear it from there. That's kind of the way they played. Not so much this time. There was a lot of pressure on the offense to move the puck around and so forth. And that's where, they we scored on the power play really early on, but they did a great job penalty killing as well. They didn't look like the number 32 in the league because they started pressuring and jumping on Hurricane players as they were getting the puck, making it very difficult to move around and get those prime chances that you would normally.
Couple of turnovers. They caused a couple of turnovers for sure that I was like, oh, you're going to want that one back maybe, right? But luckily, Freddie Andersen hangs in there and makes 10 bell saves again. Mike kind of alluded to it at the start of the show. I think if things continue to go well, having the blood clot issue might have been the best thing for Freddie Andersen because he gets months of rest, right? Durability's always been one of the questions around him, but he's never had this kind of a layoff, right, before coming in, and he's been just gangbuster since. So I was really impressed by, you mentioned the defensive change. We had Isles Girl 3, Kim was on with us, right, for our playoff preview episode Thursday.
Yep.
She was talking about Cizikas. And I made it a point to like really keep an eye on it. And she's 100% right. He got bumped off the fourth line and was absolutely all over the ice last night. Kim nailed it, right? So he's one of those guys you're like, oh wow, I've seen him and you know the name and all, but when I really watched him, I went, oh yeah, he might be a thorn in our side.
Well, he was kind of an issue. He was kind of an issue last year in the first round. Maybe didn't show up so much in the score sheet, but yeah, he was. He was going all over the place. Anderson, he was going all over the place last year. I mean, this is not a bunch of butchers coming down from the island. It's a good hockey team. And, I give him full marks for responding to Patrick Waugh when he took over in January. And, they were able to, secure the playoff spot and get here. And, but yeah, no, there's plenty of talent in that Islander roster. I want to go back to the PK point that you made, though, a second ago about how they stayed, for the most part, in a disciplined box for much of the year, and then they were pressuring. I think when you talk about a penalty kill, if you're pressuring the team who's got the offense too, you're pressuring the team on the power play on your PK, and you're fronting the puck, and you're basically forcing them to A, make a decision, and B, make that decision rapidly. If you make a bad decision in a quick manner, a lot of times it ends up being a mistake. So, and that's a good thing for the penalty killing unit where they can get control and clear the zone. So doesn't surprise me. Again, I think that's probably a Patrick Waugh philosophy change there with the way that he wants his guys to play. And I think players probably enjoy that a little bit more than just standing there in a four-pointed box and trying to keep it to the outside. But I think you look at that, and I think you, as the Islanders, I think you have to try. I think they know. I think Patrick Waugh knows that they're a decided underdog in this series, but he's trying to limit the decidedness factor of that by taking away some of Carolina's strengths, and the power play being one of them. If they can force now, and if he can force the point men, whether it's Burns and Slavin or Pesci Shea or whoever rotates out, if Aho rotates out to the point, whatever, if they can force those guys into a bad decision that forces them to have to clear the zone, that's okay. That they'll take that every time. The problem with that, though, is that it can blow up in your face because Carolina's power play point men usually are pretty solid puck handlers and they don't get too rattled. So again, I think you try to. I hate to fall back on the three words, but guys, it's the playoffs, and you're trying to find every little edge, any little edge that can help you. Whether it's making your opponent make a mistake on the power play, just in a simple partner pass across the zone. If Brett Burns gets pressured and ends up having to throw it over to Slavin, but pulls the pass off target a little bit and ends up out of the zone, that's a win for the Islander power penalty kill. So it's those little things. It's all those little things that happen in the game that add up. That is what makes the game so much fun to watch, and it's so great to watch the chess match happen. And it's that. So I just wanted to get that out there as far as the PK goes, because that was a point that Ray made. I wanted to just follow up on. Yeah,
and to your point about it being a chess match, it's the little things in the playoffs. right? The playoffs is a different animal. I know you keep saying it. We agree with you 100%. The two things that hit me last night that were a little different were, one is the Hurricanes did a great job winning faceoffs. They won 58%, over 58%. That's a big deal in any game, particularly in the playoffs, particularly the offensive zone faceoffs.
That's a pretty good night at the dot. Yeah, 58%. Right. I'd take that any day, Louis. Yeah,
absolutely. The Hurricanes, 27 hits to 19 for the Islanders. That kind of went the opposite of what I think people were expecting. People keep thinking this is the Islander team of pylons that's just going to rough things up. But the Hurricanes were the ones doing the hitting. And if you can score on the power play, you can keep the Islanders if they want to get rough. They're not going to if you're hurting them on the power play, right? If you go on the power play and you're clicking at 30%, they're not going to want to take penalties. And then lastly, the Islanders, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, they block a ton of shots. They blocked 21 shots last night. So if you want to know why you ended up with 26 shots on goal, it's because 21 of them went right into a body and, pretty much all on purpose, right? The Islanders are an excellent defensive team, and that goes along with that penalty kill. They're going to be more aggressive, and they're going to come at you, and they're going to get right in the way of the puck, right? So you're not going to get things through. So that low Brent Burns slapper looking for a rebound is just not going to be there as much. You're going to have to find ways to get creative and get around that.
Yeah, it's 26 shots on goal and 21 blocks. That's at least 47 shot attempts by Carolina. That's 47 shot attempts. 26 made the target, 21 got blocked, and I don't know how many others there were that may have missed the net. So I think you start adding up those shot attempt numbers, and you look, and the Hurricanes may not, and I don't know the number, but I'm going to guess it wasn't that far off from what they've done in a regular season, in a regular season game with the Islanders too. Sorry about that, Mike.
No, it's okay, because one of the things that I had noticed was a little bit of a combination of not only it was a combination, it was almost like an offensive strategy from your own end, where they would pressure the D, they would come charging in. Defensemen try to throw a shot, they get a block, and the guy that put the pressure on the D kind of leaks out into the neutral zone looking for that jailbreak kind of thing. And they had a few of those opportunities where they were able to get away. Now, luckily, yesterday, not as many of those, breakaway opportunities or 2-on-1 opportunities, because, defensive partners were smart and recognizing what was going on and taking off with the guy that was, on the break, right? But it was, it was a great game. I love watching the strategies and how they change. I'm going to slightly adjust the discussion here in so much as I want to come back to Freddie Andersen. And one of the things coming into the playoffs, it wasn't a criticism, but it was the low-hanging fruit that everyone wanted to say was going to be an issue for the Canes, and that was goaltending. They almost completely disregard the 951 goals against average, in the last 9 games, the shutouts that he had and all the rest of it, all of it because they say he's fragile. Now, I looked at this game as an opportunity for him to finally say, okay, are you happy now? Showing the world that this is I am for real. I can make those saves. Stop with the criticism. But I noticed in the first period, he was fighting the puck a little bit, maybe a little bit of nerves and stuff. But as their opportunities got greater, he elevated his game as well. And it was just one of the things that I noticed about Freddie, and wanted to get both of your comments on it, whether that's what you saw or that's what maybe you expected, out of him.
Well, I other than the big save, that save on Dobson, Freddie Andersen was Freddie Andersen. And if that Freddie Andersen shows, and he's going to make the 10 bell save when needed, more often than not. But if that's the Freddie Andersen that shows up every night against the Islanders, and assuming the offense continues to find ways to put pucks in the net, I don't know if Rod Windemore has any reason to put Pyotr Kochetkov in the net. And I say that with full respect for Kochetkov and the way that he's played, but Andersen, minus the goal that was scored, by the Islanders, and that was probably one of those opportunities that he'd love to have back because he didn't control the rebound. Andersen looked like he was defending the net in a practice yesterday.
Interesting.
He looked. I understand that the first period maybe fighting a little bit, but as the game wore on, his movements in the net, going low, getting on the butterfly and guiding rebounds to areas.
Yeah.
Making sure that it wasn't a high slot rebound chance. When the defense breaks down and he's got to come out and he's probably a foot and a half at the top of his crease and having to stop a shot in the high slot. His movements were so efficient yesterday in game one, in my opinion. But he was moving with purpose. He was going from point A to point B where he needed to go, and it looked effortless. And I just looked at Andersen in the second period on and just thought, no, he's locked in. The Islanders are going to have to really do something special to beat this guy because he looked to be in just I want to say just icy, stone cold, methodical, not robotic, but I mean, it was just efficient. It was really good to see, and see him play that way, knowing what he's gone through this season with the health issues and everything else. And now he's on hockey's biggest stage, and in game one he showed that he can do this like he's done before, but this just felt different, and in a good way. It felt different in a good way from my seat. But I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I just think that Freddie was dialed in game one, and if that guy keeps showing up, man, it's going to be tough for the Islanders.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you guys, would you continue the rotation between Andersen and Kochetkov, or it? And I agree with you. In my opinion, Freddie Andersen has a chip on his shoulder, right? He's been blamed for the Toronto's early exits, and we saw what happened to them yesterday without Freddie Andersen, right? So, and he considered most wins, in the first 500 games, and like Ray said, 2 shutouts and a .951 save percentage. He had a .971 yesterday. I think Andersen is playing with something to prove, and I'm happy to just ride that for the most part. At least series by series. Maybe between series you want to make sure Kochetkov stays in the mix, but I'm fine riding Freddie. The other question I had for you guys was going to be, does Freddie have to win a cup in order to shed he fails in the playoffs? Is it, would winning an Eastern Conference Finals be enough, for example? Or is he somebody who's going to have to win a cup to prove the haters wrong?
If I can jump in, number one, Freddie's is the number one. No disrespect again to Pyotr the Great, but he's number one, and you stay with Freddie. I mean, he's hot. He's doing his job great. No reason to pull him. There's confidence in Freddie that just expands, that aura expands throughout the lineup because they know, like Mike said, there will be 10 bell saves that he will make that he has no business making. They should be in the net, and they're not. And that just gives you that little burst of adrenaline to say, yeah, you know what? He's unbeatable. We are unbeatable. That's what he kind of does. So I would ride with him the rest of the way and wouldn't switch it up. The other question, that's a tough one. Sadly, because he was criticized so heavily in Toronto, where the spotlight shines brightest of anywhere in the league, I think that, yes, he would have to actually win it. Everyone, because we got swept in the Eastern Conference Final, everyone your goaltender sucks. Freddie was not the problem with you know what I mean? Like, he was not the problem. He was the reason why every one of those games were like one goal losses.
One goal game.
They were so close. Yeah. So look, the criticism is completely unfair, but it's going to stick with him. His, career fragility hurts him. And in order to flush that all down the toilet, him lifting Lord Stanley would certainly do that. I don't even think winning in the Eastern Conference Final, just getting there, I don't even think would be enough. And some of that has to do with it not necessarily being enough in a lot of people's eyes for the Canes entirely. Like, this is a team that's been very good and should have been, in the Stanley Cup final on a couple of seasons and failed to get there. Now it's not just good enough to get there. And especially after picking up Gensel and Kuznetsov, which Waddell said, okay, fans, you've been begging me to make these line moves to get that extra piece that we need to go the whole way. There it is. Now we've got to do it. And I think it has to be win. And it's unfair. It's not right. I mean, in my eyes, Freddie doesn't have anything to prove to discuss his talent and ability and skill. Yeah, but looking around the league and the media, not Mike Solarte, of course. He's a thinker. Right, in the media, he's got the brains and knows.
It does
better.
help when you actually watch Hurricanes hockey, Steve Dangle. Just saying, if you're going to throw out opinions about the team, actually watching the games might help. Just throwing that out there for you, bud.
Let me go ahead, finish up, Ray. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm all done.
I was going to say, when we talk about Freddie Andersen and does he need to win a cup? I mean, if you're a goaltender in the NHL that has had, a modicum of success and people want to place you amongst the elites, then yes, he has to win a cup to satisfy the haters out there and all that. But let me just put it to you this way too, because Freddie playing in Toronto for all those years, he was playing, in my opinion, one of the three most difficult positions in all of sports. Okay? The three most difficult positions in all of sports, in my opinion. Goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, center field for the New York Yankees, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Those three positions throughout sports, throughout all the sports, have, in my opinion, the most scrutiny, biggest, whitest, brightest, hottest spotlights on them. And you see that's why you can say, well, the quarterbacks for the Cowboys the past couple of years have been Dak Prescott and and Tony Romo and Troy Aikman, and you can round those guys off. Goaltenders for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, and Leafs fans are the longest suffering fans in the NHL for teams that have a Stanley Cup in their history. I mean, it's from 57 years, is that right? Something like that. I mean, it's some crazy number. Yes. So they haven't won a Stanley Cup in 57 years. It's got to be this goaltender's fault. It's clear. When we had Cujo, we should have won. When we had Felix Potvin, we should have won. And when we had Trevor Kidd, we should have won. And when we had Ed Belfour, we should have won. No. But those guys took a lot of the heat because they were the goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Andersen is just fine. To me, I'm with you. He doesn't have to win a Stanley Cup to prove that he's among the elite goaltenders in his career span. Because again, he played under the brightest, hottest spotlights in Toronto, and now with Carolina and the team that's in front of him, I think that's the thing that a lot of folks lose sight of. A goaltender gives up one bad goal, and he's, how did he ever get out of junior? How did he make it? How did that slug get out of the nets and out of Mississauga and end up in Toronto? Well, There's a reason. He's a talented player, and talented goaltenders look even better when they've got talented D in front of them. And this Hurricanes top six is, is pretty special. So, no, to answer your question, Freddie does not need to win a Stanley Cup to shut anybody up. I think he just needs to win a Stanley Cup so he has another piece of hardware and a nice ring to wear around. Because he's a guy. Look at his career. I think he's a guy that deserves a shot at. He deserves a shot at playing in the final. And but that's the beauty of the game. It's 20 guys on a bench every night, and everybody's got to pull the rope in the same direction.
So when we're looking at game 2, one of the things that I had said, which was funny about game 1, there were a lot of, there were Islander fans out there, chirping. We played a really great game. This is something to feel good about. Even though we lost, something to feel good about. We played a great game. And my immediate thought was, we did not play a great game and won. Now, I think the lesson will be learned. And Kuznetsov was all about it at the end of the game in the interviews. He flat out said, we stunk. It's not acceptable. And we've got to be better. And it didn't sound like there was really any joy in his voice, talking about a victory. And I'm looking at game 2, and if there's a blowout game, this one might be the one where the Hurricanes come out strong, really strong, and just overwhelm the Islanders. That's my guess, but I don't know. What do you guys see for game 2?
So that is a veteran leadership interview. That is a guy who has a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Right? We stunk. We won one, great. We got to win 3 more to win the series. Andersen, great. That's what he gets paid to do, right? Kuzi is all business. And the guys are going to take it the right way in the locker room. We as fans should take it the right way. Nobody's getting mad at Kuzi for what he said. I know a few people are like, oh, how's that going to come? It's going to come across fine because he knows what it takes to win. And for all the Jarvisness we get and the fun times and the part of the reason they're a good team is because they get along and they relax and they feel comfortable. You also need to feel comfortable with the guy in the room who's like, hey, I'm calling this out. Like, we got to be better. If you want to win a cup, we're at this level, right? We got to get to this level, right? Letterkenny hockey. And that's what Kuzi did. That was my favorite interview of the year. That rivals Pyotr Kochekhov's first interview after a game when he was on with Hannah. And he, pulled his helmet off. Those 2 interviews are far and above everything else we've got. And I love that interview from Kuzi.
Sorry, Mike, just before you jump in, do you know what that interview sounded like? It sounded like Kevin Costner walking into the bullpen after a great inning and everyone being excited, and then him just ripping everyone's heads off.
Yeah, your fastball's up, your curveball's hanging, and the show they would have ripped you.
Exactly.
That's right, baby.
That's exactly how it felt. And then he, says, I'm going to take this guy downtown. Kuznetsov has the ability to take the Islanders downtown, no question. Sorry, I had to get the Bull Durham reference in one of my favorite movies.
No, it's absolutely understandable. No, here's the you guys are right. You guys are right on. Kuznetsov in the post-game interview saying, yeah, this is unacceptable. We weren't good. We weren't good enough. That is not, you're absolutely right. It's not going to be met with any kind of, oh, who's this guy talking? He's just new here, everything else. Evgeny Kuznetsov, let's not lose sight of the fact that he was basically on the scrap heap for the Capitals. Mm-hmm. Like they had demoted him, they had sent him away from the team, they sent him down to Hershey. They were done with him for whatever. And I don't know the story and why all that went down, but it's not like the guy forgot how to play hockey. Okay. And so he was exiled basically from the Caps, and Carolina's like, yeah, come on over. Because Rob Brindamore had some history with him at the All-Star game. And, it was like, yeah, this would be a good piece to add. Another, a guy that Dmitry Orlov is familiar with. a fellow Russian player that can, kind of educate the Chekhov and about the league, and bring this youngster along. Andrei Svechnikov, another guy that can perhaps pick up some learn some of the game from this guy. So it was he's a phoenix rising from the ashes of the NHL, and because he is that kind of person with a Stanley Cup ring in his jewelry box, and the experience of what it takes and the failures that the Caps went through when he was there. The guy's seen a bit now, okay? So he's seen plenty, and he knows what it takes to win. So that room, and I was in town for a couple of games this year, and that room, the balance between the youthful exuberance of a guy like Seth Jarvis and the veteran stability leadership of guys like Orlov and Burns, and sorry, Sebastian, but you're now becoming an older guy. That balance, that equilibrium that they've got in that room is as good as it's been. And I don't have, when you see a guy like Kuznetsov say what he said after the game yesterday, saying it's not, we stunk, it's not acceptable, we got to be better. That to me is what that room is built on. It's brutal honesty, it's accountability, and to your point, game two, if there's going to be a blowout game, it could come in game two. Now the flip side of that, though, is where the Islanders are saying, "Well, we played pretty well. We're pretty happy with this." The flip side of that is they could be lying through their teeth. We're pretty happy with it. You're going to have the mental warfare, the psychological warfare of a playoff series. Yeah, we played pretty well. They could be in the room behind closed doors saying, "We were junk. How are we only getting this many shots? How are we not doing this? Why are we not doing that? We got to be better." We could see a much different Islander unit hit the ice on Monday with a lot more focus, a lot more drive. Flip the script on the hits. In the statistics there, they become more of the aggressors. And look, they've already got the first shovel of dirt in their grave has been moved. Pretty soon their foot's going to be in it if they don't turn things around. So they don't want to go back to Long Island down 2-0. So I agree that there could be a blowout in Carolina's favor, but I also agree they also want to point out the Islanders could be lying to everybody.
Yeah,
they could be talking a much different game in front of the cameras than they are behind closed doors. So it's again, let's go back to the cliche. Guys, say it with me. It's the playoffs.
Yeah, true enough. Hey, we chopped this one up pretty good, but there's still other things going on in the league, and this one was one that we definitely wanted to take some time and chat about, and that is, I wanted to say the death of a franchise, but it's not really the death of a franchise, it's more of the induced coma.
It's the Walt Disney cryogenic freezing.
Yeah, that's even better. See, that's why you're the expert, man. Coyotes are now in Utah. They played their final game, and if you didn't feel awful, especially as a fan of this particular franchise, you have no soul. Let me just throw that out there. I mean, it was awful to watch, and I just could not help but look at this as having some very striking similarities to what the Hartford Whalers / Carolina Hurricanes situation. And I wanted to A, acknowledge it, and B, see if I was just trying to make a story where there isn't one, and wanted to talk to you guys about it. This one it's so hard. And I mean, is what the owner's name, I've never been able to pronounce it. Meruelo.
Meruelo.
Yeah. Is Meruelo? as evil as Peter Karmanos was made out to be,
Have you
is.
have you ever heard of Hanlon's razor? We've all heard of
Han-
Occam's razor, I think, right?
I've
You ever
never heard of Hanlon's. No.
Hanlon's razor says never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence.
Ooh.
And I think that applies here. I don't think Meruelo is like trying to destroy the Coyotes. I don't, right? But when you look at every step of the way, right? Turn down a 20-year lease. He's like, I didn't want to sign a 20-year lease. But that's a common thing. The Hurricanes just signed, I think, a 25-year lease. Like, that's just a normal thing for them to invest the kind of money that your team's going to be there, right? Then he gets locked out for not paying his bills. And then, I think with Severelli, there's rumors that hotels are wanting money up front because they're not getting paid in a reasonable time, right? Then after the last game, the Coyotes Twitter account, which was handled by Meruelo's son, which was confirmed, tweets out like, see you next season, right? And then he has that presser with Gary Bettman. And he was so bad, I felt bad for Gary Bettman having to sit up there. And that takes a lot for me to feel bad for Gary Bettman, folks.
No kidding. And look, Bettman had to come to the rescue.
Right. Bettman was the hero in that one, y'all. That's not good.
There might have been
it's not to say it's not good. Let's just say that's not normal.
True.
That's not normal. That's
True.
Just not normal.
He did what he is supposed to do for his owners. For folks who get upset at Bettman, he's a shill, right? His bosses, he has 32 bosses. He does whatever they tell them to do. So whatever decisions he makes y'all don't like, it's the owners.
Yeah, it is the owners, no question. Mike, what do you think of all of this?
Well, first off, my heart goes out to the fans of the Coyotes. Okay. Watching that last game, and they win the game, which is fitting, inside a college arena. The NHL had its hands tied, and the hands of the NHL have been tied with this franchise for a very long time. Okay. Not initially when they moved from Winnipeg down to Phoenix and this is hockey in the desert and it could work and the fans were enthusiastic, but then they had building problem after building problem after building problem. I think that, before I get to solutions, let me tug at my heartstrings here a bit. When the Hartford Whalers were relocated to Carolina, I, as a Carolina resident and a member of the media at the time, was excited for the prospect of a team, an NHL team, coming to the market that I work in, because obviously I love the game and everything. So when I was in Raleigh and the Hurricanes were relocating, man, I was stoked. I mean, how are they going to build the rink and this, that, and I was like, I didn't, for 1 second, did I stop and pause and think about what the Whalers fans were going through. And now we're talking over 25 years ago, this all takes place, almost 30, good Lord. And as I've continued in this career of mine and thought, and you start to, think back and you start to appreciate and analyze and everything. And, when I first started thinking about, my game as a fan came at the expense of another fan and another fan base. That's a pretty sobering thought. Now, while Hartford lost their team, the Coyotes, Arizona, Phoenix, whatever you want to call them, they have lost their team for now. And
right, different.
It's a much different situation. It doesn't necessarily soften the blow, because what I've noticed in Arizona, and I haven't been out there for the Final Four, there's Coyote stuff everywhere. Like, you see it, and even though we were staying primarily in Glendale, there were still Coyote remnants in and around where we were for the Final Four. But I just, I look at it and I just think it doesn't soften the blow, but the plan that the NHL has put out there as of now is to return to Phoenix, Glendale, wherever, return to the desert with a team. So when Bettman was up there saying Utah is not an expansion, this is a new franchise, and we want to return. We can make hockey work in the desert. Basically, that's buying Meruelo and any other future ownership group or whatever time to get a building to, they're basically resetting Phoenix. And that's not a bad thing because, again, Phoenix has been a mess for a long time. And I'm not talking about the team. I'm not talking about the players, the performance on the ice. I'm talking about the entire situation with that franchise. The only constant that has been a good thing has been that fan base. And my heart goes out to those guys because they are going to be missing their team. And hopefully it's not for very long. Hopefully we're talking maybe 5 years. But that also brings in the question of if you're going to add a team back in the West, now you have franchise imbalance across the NHL and you're at 33 teams. Do we say hello Quebec City? Do we say hello Hamilton in the East? Do we say hello Houston and make them an Eastern Conference team? I mean, if the NHL is true to their word and they stay in this and they want to bring hockey back to Phoenix in 5 years, then we're talking about expansion again. And so, and you can't, to me, in my opinion, you can't add one in one conference without adding another in another conference. So I think that if we're going to see Phoenix return, Arizona return, I would not be surprised. And don't hold me to this. I don't want old takes exposed, whatever. But it wouldn't surprise me that at the same time Phoenix comes in, you see a Hamilton, Ontario, or you see a Quebec City, Quebec come back as well.
And I'd love to see I'd love to see the Nordiques back. We are kind of running out of time. We do have one other thing to get to, but you brought something up. I want to ask this question, and I'll throw it out quick. When the NHL, if everything comes to fruition and gets back into Arizona, do they have to have Meruelo as the owner? I always understood that in these transactions and buying and selling and stuff, the other owners get to have a look and kind of examine, who we're letting into our group. And by letting into their group, they get to say yay or nay. Now, the way this went so terribly, I don't think anyone really wants him to own the team again. But is that even an option? Can they just say, have we closed the door on Meruelo but open the door to other people who may want to bring a team back?
You want to shot at this, Brad?
So the way I understand it is if Meruelo gets an arena built in 5 years, the NHL basically owes him the franchise back, is the way I understand it.
Okay.
So step one is, does he win the land auction for the land that he says he's going to buy? If he doesn't, I think that he's done, right? Because he bought the Coyotes for like $300 or $400 million and is now selling it, for $1 billion and making $500 million profit.
Yeah.
With all the things he's gone through, he might be the biggest hockey fan in the world, but with all the things he's gone through, I think he should take the money and run, let somebody else put a team back in Arizona. I mean, as much as Hartford would want the Whale back, would they take the Whalers back if Karmanos was the owner? I don't think they would. I think they'd run him out of town with fire and pitchforks, right? So, yeah, I think contractually, when we don't know the specifics, but from what we've heard, if he gets an arena built within 5 years, it's the ball is in his court. I don't think it should be. I'm not the league. What do I know? And just real quickly, being on the receiving end of a team in this situation, there was a lot of bad blood between some Whalers fans and Carolina fans. And even today, like you still have pockets of Whalers fans who were upset. And I get that. for Hurricanes fans, have a little empathy if you can. I know some folks don't, and they've had enough of the mess. And we call you Judge Wapner because you were one of the Whalers fans. Like, hey, it's the same team, it's the same players. The people of Raleigh are not who you should be mad at. Be mad at the owner, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you are a Hurricanes fan and this is water off the duck's back, you just try and think of how, we were closer to moving than people probably want to admit during that 9-year stretch. Right? Yeah. Tom Dundon kept this team here. Like, if it wasn't for Dundon, I don't know that we'd have a Carolina Hurricanes today. So just try and be empathetic if you're not already. I think the vast majority of Hurricanes fans have been very supportive. Feel bad for the Yotes fans. For all the jokes and stuff we've cracked over the years, and I've certainly made my fair share, the fans were never the issue.
No. Not
right?
At all.
Give them a good owner. And the team will get better, and if the team gets better, the fans will show up. And Tom Dundon is the perfect example of that happening.
There you go. Mike, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that you talked about the vetting process. The owners have to determine if they're going to let this guy into their group. Well, they've already done that. So as far as the owners are concerned, they love Alex Meruelo because they allowed him to purchase the franchise and be the guy. But and Halen's Razor is a great. That's awesome. That was really well done, Brad. Just because he's got the money, he's got the funds, it doesn't make him the smartest NHL owner. And I think that Meruelo can be successful. I don't know that he will. I don't know that he will remain. But I think he's got to surround himself with some hockey people to guide him to making better decisions. Now, the 20-year lease thing, to me, I think he refused that because he wanted a new building. I don't think he wanted to play at Gila River Arena or whatever it was, Gila River Resorts Casino. They got like 19 different names for that place now. Yeah. But I don't think he wanted to stay there because that was a Glendale, Arizona arena. And I think he wanted his team in Phoenix. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because you still look. I flew into Sky Harbor and it was 30 minutes to get to Glendale. Are you going to ask Phoenix fans to drive a half hour? You have more population center in Phoenix, so it makes more sense for him to try to get something that's closer to the Phoenix metropolitan area. And again, Glendale's beautiful. It's nice. But I don't think there's anything wrong with him wanting to play in the downtown area of Phoenix. You got a higher population center, you got a better chance of putting more bodies in the building. So I get it. He didn't want to stay in Glendale for 20 years. It didn't make sense. That's, to me, not a bad move. But the worst part is that we're in an era now that, and I shouldn't say now, it's been like this most of my life, but, millionaire, billionaire owners coming to governments and saying, hey, build me a building or I'm leaving. That stuff doesn't fly anymore. It was a tough sell back then, and it's even tougher now. And so the lack, and I don't want to say lack of cooperation, but the lack of a partnership between the Yotes and local governments out there to help them build something, and it just, again, it's not lack of cooperation, but they did this. It's just a tougher putt to make, and those sorts of things hampered the building, the construction of a new building. And now we're in this position where Meruelo's got to go a different way. So again, it's been a mess in Phoenix for a long time, but if this ultimately wins the day for having hockey in Arizona, hockey in Phoenix, those fans get their team back, and we end up with even expansion in the East, then it's short-term pain for long-term gain, and I'm okay with that.
Just real quick, because we are getting a little short. Meruelo needs to be more Tom Dundon, less Dave Tepper.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Get a hockey guy and say, here's the keys. Go make me successful. And then write checks. Keep your mouth quiet. That's it.
Yeah, he said he was scared of the media and he hated the media, right? So just keep your mouth shut, sign the checks, keep things moving along.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't dislike the media. He just dislikes being a public figure. But you know what? But if you own a sports franchise, you immediately become a public figure. So you got to get used to it.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
No question. That was fun watching.
Let's wrap this on a high note, though, Ray.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do that. Now, the last time we had Mike Solarte with us, he teased us with a story that harkened back to the days of the Whalers and
early days of the Hurricanes.
Yeah, bringing in the Hurricanes, and it was one of my favorite players in Whaler history. Brad's, I think I can speak for Brad.
It was my favorite Whale for sure, yeah.
No question. Kevin Dineen, and you had a story that you said that you could only tell us live, and you did tell us live at the Stadium Series when we got a chance to meet off air, and it was fantastic. And you tell us today that you can actually share the story with all of our listeners. So we are turning the floor to you to share this great story. This is
a beaut, y'all.
It's a beaut. Oh my gosh.
Well, with all that buildup, I hope I don't disappoint. But back in the day, we're talking Carolina Hurricanes early days. They had just, they were practicing in Raleigh. They were, playing in Greensboro. They were, this is 1998. I had to think about it because it was a year that I ended up, I'll weave into why I know it's 98. But anyway, back in the day, there was a paper called NC Stormfront. It was a hockey publication where, a lot of good fan content was exchanged before, message boards and all that stuff. We actually, had to physically have a paper in our hands to read stuff. And so NC Stormfront reached out to me. I was doing radio and TV in Raleigh, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like to be a guest contributor to, could you, maybe write us a column once a month or whatever?" And, I said, sure. I'd love to, because it's an opportunity to get back to my sports writing roots and bang out some copy. And so there was this, at the time, the hot topic surrounding the Hurricanes was that they weren't tough enough. They needed more team toughness. And this is 98, so the game is starting to morph away from the Stu Grimsons and the Bob Proberts and the pure, I'm only on this team because I'm a fighter to protect our star role. Okay, those guys were being phased out of the game, slowly but surely. And I disagreed that the Hurricanes were not tough enough. I said that they were plenty tough enough. You don't have to you got to have guys that can play the game now. You got to have skill guys. You got to have guys that can not only carry the puck, shoot the puck, score goals, take a body, whatever. You needed to have that. But so that was the gist of the article. But there was a line in there that I wrote, and I own it. I wrote it, and I wrote it with this intention: is that the line was, the Hurricanes don't have to fight to prove that they're tough. The last guy that I saw fight was Kevin Dineen. Now, the way I wrote it was that physically, with my own two eyes, the last Hurricane I saw drop the mitts was Kevin Dineen. The way Kevin Dineen took it was that the last guy you're ever going to see fight is Kevin Dineen. Now, dear Lord, see, that's the right reaction. Thank you, because now I watched Kevin Dineen for years before he was a Hurricane. Loved his game, running through walls, running through guys, scoring goals, being a gritty SOB on the ice. Loved Kevin Dineen, always did. Well, he thought I chirped him. He thought I called him a wallflower. He thought I basically said, "You're not tough." Now, I don't know this is happening. I don't know that I have angered Dino. I show up to practice one day. They're practicing off of Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's a Polarized Plex. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, I go over there. I got my camera. I'm working for the TV station. I'm going to get some sound. And the boys are coming off the ice. And they'd seen me around the room. And the guys knew who I was. And Rob DeMaio was at the club at that time. And he skates by me and goes, I'd stay away from Dino, man. He's you. It's like, what the heck did I do? I had no idea what the heck I did to Kevin. He came off the ice and he was so mad at me. Like it was in his eyes. He was physically like, I felt like, I mean, it's hard to describe. Kevin and I weren't like tight. We weren't friends. Like we didn't hang out, but he looked like I had really dishonored him and really had hurt. I'd really harmed him and really hurt him. And I couldn't understand why. And now I'm starting like, what the heck is going on here? And so Chris Brown is the PR director at the time, and he comes over. He pulls me aside and says, "Hey, what the thing you wrote about Dino?" I said, "What did I write about Dino?" And he explains to me the line, and I said, "No, Chris, he's the last guy I saw drop the gloves, like with my eyes. That's what I said." He said, all right, well, you know, this is like early December. Okay. And so he's like, yeah, I'll talk to him. And so I leave and I'm like, geez Louise, what in the world is going on here? I didn't choke the guy. So now that happens. My TV station says, we need you to go to Las Vegas and Miami to cover the Tar Heels in the Las Vegas Bowl and the Wolfpack in the Micron PC Bowl. And it's the Heels play before Christmas, the Wolfpack play after Christmas. I said, okay, fine. Fly me to Vegas, fly me to Chicago so I can see my family at Christmas, and I'll fly to Miami after that. They book everything, I go. So I'm out of Raleigh for like 2 weeks. All right? I come back. It's after Christmas. I come back, and I go to Hurricanes practice. And I'm there without my camera. I'm just there to, you know, get some radio sound. And guys are coming off the ice. Hey, what's up? I'm just kind of nodding at them. Well, here comes Kevin Dineen. And I'm standing there, and I'm standing there with my hands in my pockets, and I'm just, you know, watching him come off the ice. And he skates over and steps off the ice onto the walkway, and then he like bluffs like he's going to hit me. Like he gives me, you know, and you guys can see this, but like he comes up and he does one of these, like he's looking at me. And he goes like that, like he's gonna, you know, throw a punch at me. And I would
move. I
didn't flinch. I was like, "Look, man, you were ticked at me 2 weeks ago. I have no idea what you're doing now, but whatever. You're not going to hit me." And he starts smiling, and I looked at him and I said, "What is your problem?" He says, "Have you been to your office yet, the radio station?" I said, "No." And he says, "Okay, no problem. I get it now." He says, he's looked at me and says, "We're all good. Go to your office." I said, all right, what the hell is he talking about? So I get to the office and there's this wrapped Christmas gift for me. And there's the sticker that's put on the gift that says, "To Mike from your least favorite player." I'm like, oh, Jesus, what is this? And I'm checking it to make sure it's not ticking. So I open it up. And there's a card, and this card is embossed. It's a beautiful card. It's from Kevin Dineen. It says, and I'll read it to you. I've got it here. I know you can't see it, but I've got it here. And it says, "Mike, I realized after a Chris Brown explanation that you're not a bad judge of character, just a bad writer. Hope this helps you stay concise, simple, and understandable." Got that off the cover, "without losing your unique style. Regards, Sally." Crossed out, "Dino."
Wow.
That's the card. Okay. Now I haven't opened the gift. And the gift is the Complete Idiot's Guide to Grammar and Style. And so it was, I honestly laughed so hard in the office that I started to cry. I was laughing so hard. I was laughing to tears. And so I went to practice the next day. The boys had a couple of days before they had to play again. I went to practice the next day. I said, "Dino, USOB, that's just good." I said, I'll take that. That's beautiful." And he also did sign inside the book. "Mike, hope this helps you read, write, spell right. Dino number 11. And the word read is spelled R-E-E-D.
Yeah.
The word write is spelled W-R-I-G-H-T. The word spell is S-P-E-L. And the word right is syntax. It should be correctly. It says right, So, yeah. And and the card and your ex favorite player.
Oh,
is what it was. So that's my Kevin Dineen story, where he wanted to kill me, and then realized that killing me would have been an overreaction, but he got the last word. But actually, that's not true, because I still have the book and I still have the card, and this is one of all the things that you guys have seen in my hockey collection and stuff like that. This book and this card, my two favorite things that I've ever gotten in working in this crazy business. So,
Mike, this story gets better every time I hear it. And you're right. That is the single greatest Kevin Dineen autographed item ever.
Oh, yeah.
Ever. That's amazing. Oh
yeah.
That's one of my favorite hockey anecdotes of any player interaction of all time. That's amazing.
I cherish this is something that I will never forget. It was honestly, it was while it's a fun story and a funny story, it was a big help for me in my career, because you got to make sure you get your point across correctly. And this was a nice reminder, and I'm glad it didn't come with, a barrage of right hands to the jaw from Kevin Dineen. But it was a big help. And so I've got the book, I've got the card, and I've got a memory that'll last a lifetime. So for that I am grateful.
If that would have been 97 when he was captain, you might have gotten hands from 23 guys in total. You know what I mean?
Like, oh, absolutely.
There might have been like, he said, what about the cap, right?
Yeah. Well, when Rob DeMaio skates by and says, I'd stay away from Dino if I were you. And I was like, oh, geez, what the hell did I do? That's a pretty good warning.
It's like when you get pulled over by the cops and you know you didn't do anything serious, but you're still really nervous about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Mike, you said that you didn't flinch at all. I would have crapped myself.
I didn't flinch. I didn't flinch. Yeah, I didn't flinch because I was like, okay, whatever, Kev, you were kicking me 2 weeks ago. So you're playing around now, we're cool. And I have no idea that this gift is waiting for me. So I'm just like, mentally, I was preparing myself for him to just come after me. And I was like, yeah, whatever. You want to do something? Go ahead, do something. I don't care. But then he smiles at me and he says, have you been to the office yet? Oh, okay. So I can let my guard down now a little bit. Okay, I guess we're cool. All right, cool.
I would have called the office and said, can somebody just look at my office and just, is there like a bunch of badgers locked in my office? Like, what am I walking into? Somebody, can y'all just make sure everything's cool for me to come in?
Before
there's no booby traps or nothing?
Yeah. Mike, you just put the greatest exclamation point that anyone could on a great episode. Mike Solarte of Spectrum News, thank you so much for joining us. Tell people where they can find you other than what I've already just said.
Yeah, I'm an easy find on Twitter at Mike Solarte. And obviously we're on the Chevrolet Sports Night in North Carolina on Spectrum News 1, 10:30 Monday through Friday is when I am kind of in the chair, and it's the busy time of year right now because we've got we got Hurricanes playoffs, and we've got NASCAR will be rolling through the state here in a month, and then the U.S. Open in June. We got the Wells Fargo Championship, and that's just the summer. But you know what? I'm going to be taking some vacation time too, so I'm looking forward to that.
I bet you are, and well-deserved too, because you do such an outstanding job, especially when you carve out a little bit of time in your life to chat with us in the storm.
My dad still lives north of Charlotte, loves listening and watching you guys.
I appreciate that, boys, and thank you so much for having me. This is I'm lobbying to do this more often, so I'll keep bugging you on Twitter, and but no, this is great. Whenever I get a chance to talk with folks, and I'm in my happy place. So this is great stuff.
If they make a deep run, let's have you back on maybe in a month or so.
Sounds good.
All right, That does sound great. Brad, what an amazing episode. This is
what a way to
so
end it
much
too.
fun. The best story.
So good.
It is so good.
And for newer folks, if you don't know Kevin Dineen, it won't be maybe as funny, but if you don't know Kevin Dineen, look him up. Right?
Look up his highlights. Yeah, look up his highlight reels. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Last Whaler goal all time, first Hurricanes goal all time. He was your inaugural Hurricanes captain. Kevin Dineen means a lot more to this franchise than people maybe realize. So, amazing player too.
No question. Not much else to say, Brad, other than
Go Canes.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.